I'm Tim Ventura from AmericanAntiGravity.com, and I'm speaking this evening with Gary Voss on a number of subjects, including, first and foremost, the ranch project that he's putting together. Well, Gary, thanks for joining us, and on that note, why don't I start out with the ranch? Now, this is a project that you've been putting together for quite a while, and I know that Bill Alec from Intalic.com has also been participating a little bit. What can you tell us about it?
Well, it's something that started out about 5 years ago. I started a virtual think tank online to try to get some ideas expressed from other people that are involved in the subject of exotic forms of propulsion and alternative energy. And I had such an overwhelming response that I said, I need to take this up a notch and start going out and meeting those people. And I started going to different conferences. And lo and behold, I ran into none other than Steve Elswick. And he runs a group called the Tesla Tech Group. And he has the conference up in Salt Lake every year. He's been doing this for about 30 years now. These conferences which deal with alternative energy and dabble in a little bit of, looking into exploration of exotic propulsion.
Yeah.
And it seems that he was a man after my own heart, because I had everybody international on the web on our forum at tap-10.com and .org. And it seemed like, a lot of these people, the only way I'm going to see them is if I happen to perchance run into a conference and see some of these people attend. And that was the reason I started going out and doing that, to meet some of these people. And when I saw Steve, he was like, he has all these different inventors of these alternative, energy production devices. And this was great. I mean, there's nothing like this. It's like a virtual show and tell. You have the conference where they get a chance to do a demonstration of their equipment and devices, and then they also get to be a speaker. And this whole event is, of all the speakers, is videotaped. So if anybody missed the conference or wants to review notes and share information with other people to pass that along, it's a wonderful process. It's fully thought out and well planned and well organized.
Well, you've made an excellent point, and Steve has been bugging me to put up some links, and in fact, Bill Alec posted some using a login on American Anti-Gravity a couple of weeks ago. But I don't get around to many of the conferences, but I was tremendously impressed by Tesla Tech last year. And Steve was, the 30 years of experience truly shows, I think, in a number of different ways. First and foremost, just the presentation was slick. Everything was worked out in advance. No problems with the hotel, no problems with the flights, no problems with transportation. Just everything was set up and all the details have been worked out. But more than that, in terms of the topics that were covered there, not only did I come away learning things at the time, right? I was exposed to a lot of new and innovative ideas. Thereafter, for the next year, bits and pieces of things that I saw at that conference are beginning to make sense. I don't claim to know it all any more than the next guy does. And in his case, Steve has such a scope and breadth of experience, that it really did kind of come together. And so it's a learning process, just going to one conference.
Well, for a lot of people don't realize that Steve Elswick was one of the founding fathers of the International Tesla Society. And that's where it all began.
I didn't know that either, actually.
And now I don't know a lot of the specific details on, how the process began. But from what I understand, that him and a few other people were studying a lot of this information from other people, kind of like the way I did. And just, finding out what the interest is, and found out that there was such an overwhelming response that they decided to start putting on conferences and organizing. And that's when the International Tesla Society began on that foundation, because it appears as if a lot of these alternative energy devices are actually, a lot of them go back to a lot of Tesla's work.
Oh, yeah. No,
and
I hear
there's
references.
Other inventors that have parlayed into similar aspects of his work. But when I say his work, I mean a lot of other designs that came out later still had a foundation based on his early findings back in the turn of the century. And a lot of people don't realize, but when he worked with Edison, he was a Bosnian Serb immigrant that came over, and his dream was to harvest the power of Niagara Falls on coming to America. and he had to go on to understudy and meet some of the other constituents that were already involved in energy production. And at that time, it was Edison, and he had these DC power stations. But DC current was very weak and inefficient, and you'd have to put up a station every like 5 or 10 miles, And when he did his work, he found out that an alternating current would travel a lot faster, and it was a lot more powerful.
Yeah.
And they did a demonstration at the World's Fair in the 1900s, showing that the lights were much brighter than anybody's ever seen in the entire world.
Well,
and every time somebody plugs something turns on a light or plugs something into a socket, and for their power, this Tesla's work that everybody has to be thankful for it.
Well, now, one of the comparisons, and I think it's a fair comparison between yourself and Steve, probably one of the reasons that you guys mesh so well, is, in Steve's case, it definitely is kind of Tesla directed, in terms of maintaining that legacy. But both of you are diehard activists. And I think that's both a rare thing and also a great thing. I think that it's very inspiring to other people out there in the community, especially to innovators who may be working on their own and maybe have a little bit of exposure, but don't realize the vast scope of people doing this work. So in terms of activism, though, I think that's an area that you definitely share with Steve in slightly different ways. But, building bridges, right, the networking between different groups. And
exactly. It's that kind of organization which departs from the one-man band shows that makes a stronger base of organization and being able to actually do a larger scale publication and educate the public awareness on a larger platform. Because when you have a lot of these one-man band shows that, I've got a water, car running on water, or I got this exotic kind of propulsion system going on, you never either it never goes anywhere, or it's bought up by some private company who contracts with the government and gets shelved, and we're never heard from again. And,
I would think even more than that. It takes me back to when I first started American Anti-Gravity. And I'd been working online with the Lifters group and had some guidance from Jean-Louis Naudin and others. There's a large online community as well for lifters, especially lots of lifter stuff. But for me, I still had that lonely, isolated, I was reaching out and not sure where to find things. And the downside to working on the internet is that everything is so spread out. And so eventually meeting up with, Doug Starfield was one of the first people that I'd met. He was Larry Maurer's, I believe he was the VP of marketing at the time. Doug Starfield was the first person I met, and he was very welcoming into the community in terms of here are people that you should talk to, here are some technologies that you should check out. And then I eventually ended up meeting people like yourself who helped expand that circle of trust in terms of networking. It's, meeting one person, meeting a person after there. It's almost like I hesitate.
Well, you have a lot of experiences to share and interrelate with too, so you feel there's a common ground. And then you realize I'm not alone. I've been struggling all this time by myself. When here, as a lot of people who have the similar experiences to share, there's a common ground we can connect to, and information. And that's the biggest key part of it, is that information process. When you get a bunch of different ideas expressed that correlate to the same types of basic foundations of the information to express an idea, or to you're looking for a missing element. Someone else might have the key, and that's the beauty of unity.
Well, and lessons
you find
learned
out
also.
The missing information. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the lessons learned part was a big part for me in terms of, trying experiments with lifters that hadn't been tried before. And, I've seen this in a number of different disciplines. You get excited about it and you get involved and you start doing experiments. And whether or not they've already been conducted, you can learn from them on a personal scale. But at the same time, there's also that issue of wasting effort doing the same thing that everybody else has done. So the communication helps with that, I think, a great deal also.
Yes, it does. I mean, and that's what I meant earlier when I said that Steve Elswick was a man after my own heart, because here he already had foregone all of his time and talents and efforts and networking skills to work with these different inventors to try to get them to come together. Because, I mean, fear is one of the greatest motivators of people. It can be, something to motivate you to do something wonderful, or it can be in a obstruction to hold you back. And most of the fears that these individual inventors have are for good reasons. They're afraid that somebody's going to steal their idea. I mean, there's a track record in our history to prove this, that someone's either going to steal their idea, or they're going to threaten them, they're going to take their idea, or somebody from a security agency, from the government will say, well, we can't have this in the hands of the people because there's security issues involved, so the government has to take it over. So, I mean, all these issues aside, it's no wonder, I mean, people's lives have been threatened over some of these things that they're doing. And, and so it's no wonder that it's very difficult to try to get some of these inventors to want to come forward and share their information.
Well,
but if they don't, then the information is, is not provided on the same platform as if you just put it up on a web page.
Now, what you've just described, though, sounds suspiciously similar to a lot of the rationale that you had talked with me about a while back when you said that you were going to start the ranch. So I guess we should come full circle to the first question and say, it's out in Arizona, right? It's property, and you're looking at building almost sort of a commune for science. Is that an inaccurate description, or?
Well, the whole concept of the measure is, okay, well, Steve Elswick has already foregone all the time and effort to try to get these people together under one roof. And that was my whole concept, to try to get everybody worked and integrated and networked together under one roof. And since he's already done that, I said, okay, well, there's the void, that I was lacking of people to put together when I developed this community where we can share funding and access resources and work together in teams to develop these alternative energy and propulsion concepts and try to put them in a demonstratable vehicle. Okay,
sure.
Whether it's going from for airspace vehicle or it's like the vehicle that you're going to drive on the road. I mean, face it, over the past 50 years, as far as the way mankind propels himself around the planet, has not changed. And this technology, when I started looking at the information, how old it is, I just came unglued. Like, I can't believe we're still, we're taking quantum leaps and, with computers and other information and learning about string theory, yet we're still pushing our cars like Fred Flintstone with dinosaur bones.
Oh, absolutely.
It just does not make any sense at all. And there has to be an impact. And one of the things I've noticed is that there was this, if you remember Dennis Weaver, he played McCloud. The guy wouldn't give up his horse for a police car. And he started this thing called Drive to Survive campaign, where he would meet with different people with early hybrid, prototype hybrid cars and electric cars and hydrogen types of development processes. And they would meet in California, and the plan was to converge in Washington, but along the way, they would hit every major metropolitan city they could, get permits to caravan, because if you go through a city with, what was it, 2 or 3 more cars, it's considered a caravan. You could get cited if you don't have a permit.
Oh, okay.
And they met some roadblocks too. People knew they were coming. They would call up and, the mayor or the governor and say, well, do whatever you have to do to postpone their ability to have a permit to come through your town. I mean, these things, are real serious issues. But he managed to still pull it off, and along every city that he was able to get through and demonstrate, they would have people sign petitions. Now, here's the interesting part. Well, we still have the right to form pacts and vote and sign petitions and protest. This is the only way we're going to actually work in the system to make it work for us. Because anytime you go outside the system, your costs go up, and they're always prohibitive.
Well,
so you have to work in the system. And
I would like to see. I mean, on a personal note, in terms of energy issues, definitely, I think propulsion, may be a little bit different bag, but in terms of new energy and alternatives to oil.
Well, they actually tie in hand, because whatever you develop to push yourself on the earth, so can it be to push yourself, in the air.
Oh, that's a good point. But I think in terms of the energy part of it, though. I would like to see part of the oil dollars go to that. Not a tax, but I would like to see the oil companies. I mean, I know it's wishful thinking, but I would like to see them forego a part of their profits for research. And I think given the economies of scale in terms of they have better sensors to look for oil wells than ever before, and so the costs go down for that. even a few million here or there that they would otherwise be putting into drilling new, holes in the earth. I think that would at least start to make a statement. I think that would be a statement worth making, and given the profits they make, it certainly wouldn't be that much. To
Well,
them, it
given a
would be.
scale from 1 to 10, I mean, for example, the issues of concern of green technologies and preserving the earth and not, dirtying up our space that we're living in as far as environmental issues go. Really, I have not seen a major change from the 60s until now.
Yeah,
And
no, it's a
the
good.
reason is as long as people have that convenience of being able to, put that gas pump in their car and take off and go quickly, and as long as it's provided, and as long as propaganda such as not getting coverage with the media or making jokes and ridiculing every time somebody comes up with some quirky idea that may actually prove out to be later on not such a quirky idea after all. But the whole point is the actions of the non-coverage or the laughable coverage that people for years have been getting from the media are questionable.
Well, and I think the media drives a lot more of this negativity than people realize. We had an example last week, and I won't name any names, but we had a pretty well-known reporter, right? Not one of the the network types, but a pretty well-known reporter, pretty well respected, who's done a number of stories, decide to take on a couple of what this reporter described as fringe technologies. And because these had been investigated by the government, that was actually the reporter's point, was that the government is wasting money experimenting with fringe technologies when they could be putting money into other things. And I think the problem was that by raising negative public awareness, right? I don't even think it was an accurate article. I think it was poorly written in this case. But the problem became the department that had done the research, they had done it in a good faith effort, and all of a sudden they were just really just trying to scurry under any rock they could find, because in doing that good faith effort, they had really set themselves up for mockery. And so I think that's something that we have to work on in terms of the media, holding the media accountable and saying, look, these people are trying new ideas. Some of them will work, some of them won't, but they're all good faith and they're all for the betterment of our future. So we
Well, when you
just.
take an accountability of all the pinhooking, let me describe that as when you try to just get attention, just to get money without any real intention to go forward with an alternative device as far as energy production is concerned, then it seems like there's a lot of that, scam people that are trying to scam people for money, for example. It's a relative term for that is pinhooking. But it seems like they always cover more of the negative side that I've seen over the years. Now, there has been a change. It's not significant enough to be effective, but I have seen a small change. They are starting to cover more of the alternative energy, such as the brown gas, with the welding torch. If you touch it, it's not hot, but when you put it on rock or metal, it melts it in an instant.
It's a good
And yet
point.
it can be used for energy for a car. Now they're covering that, but the inventor they're covering isn't the guy who actually invented it. And that's, so there's actionable, questionable terms in relation to how that is portrayed, because we've been showing brown gas at the conferences in our Tesla Tech conference for the past 30 years.
Oh no,
And
that's
this is
also a
old
good point.
technology.
Yeah.
But the people who actually put their hard-earned money out of their own pocket expenses to put together these devices and try to patent them years ago hadn't got squat for media coverage, but all of a sudden this guy comes out of the woodwork and they're covering it.
Well,
So
I think that may be one of the lessons, and it's unfortunate because it sets a pretty high bar. But as somebody who could sit down, on my own, I guess, somebody who could sit down with balsa wood and aluminum foil and put together something that'll lift off and fly, there is a bar that you have to reach to get that media attention. Now, in our case, I think we were very lucky, and I think part of it was there was a great group of people already doing this research online. And so for us, it was really just providing some media to capture that media attention, putting the videos out there so the reporters could see them and get interested. But in terms of Brown's gas, it seems like the differentiating factor there has been you do have lots of homemade devices, and they look kind of hacked together. And the only thing I could see that made the new H2O system really different was it was a slick, professional package, and it was kind of off-the-shelf saleable. And I'm wondering if that doesn't set a bar that's, far above what the average garage tinkerer can do.
well, there is a difference too. That that I discovered later on that made a significant turnaround is because it turns out that this inventor that they're sponsoring is working out deals with the petroleum and oil companies. And so again, there you have a system that's put in place that'll work with putting a car up to a fuel pump and filling it with some type of material that they'll provide at the pump. What we're trying to advocate is, okay, we're trying to eliminate that completely, because there are so many other more concerns like world disasters and our storms and weather and volcanic activity that seem to be expediting. So it would behoove us as not as a nation, but as a world, to look into the alternative energy concepts, because we have other agendas to focus we didn't have over the past 50 years that are even far more worse. I mean, such as the latest news media that came out, scientists talking about there's this huge problem that's developing with the fault lines in California. And they said that it's not only due, but it's overdue for a large quake. Okay, and this is just the tip of the iceberg in considering what we've had over the past 5 years in disasters. So my point is that we need to let forego of some of the economy concerns and allow more coverage and expenditure into alternative markets for energy. And that would give us a lot more ample room to focus on preparedness for disaster problems and other issues such as, terrorism and other, other things that are, more precedent, I think, than sticking a fuel pump in your car to propel yourself around the planet.
Yeah. So now in terms of the ranch idea, it seems like one of the major focus points that you've described to me in the past is really the notion of taking a lot of the best and brightest in kind of the independent inventor world and putting them together in a single locale where they can build off each other, they can share funding and do things like that. I guess I should ask, actually, about funding and about what your vision really is for how to structure the ranch.
Well, it's a good thing you mentioned that. Bringing back the ranch issue and my connection with the Tesla Group is that now I don't have to go and find these people and put in all the time, another 5-10 years to do what Steve Elswick has done. He's already got everybody together that we need to fill, our teams, and they're all ready to go to the ranch and work together and live together, and they're all willing to do this because they've already been doing the conferences for years, and they're already together and they're networking. So the paranoia and the fear of getting together and putting everybody together is, pretty much foregone, and they're ready for the next level, and that is to provide a community in which, so now we don't have to travel out and live out of our suitcases and just get to a conference like we've been doing every year and showing the public, which we hardly get any media coverage. Now we can actually provide a platform for these inventors that are living on shoestring budgets to do this.
The example that comes to mind for me is almost the communes of the 1960s. Now, that may scare a lot of people, but I guess the idea is, having worked in the telecom industry, right? Wireless telecom, in many ways, sprung up in the Seattle area. McCaw Wireless was one of the first. And with it, you had a culture of expertise in this area. And so people bought houses, right? And their friends moved into the area to get jobs near them, and they bought houses. And now you have 4 or 5 other telecom companies that sprung up around it. And it's become this self-reinforcing culture of expertise. Now, in the 60s, I've heard that there were communes that were very similar. You would have artists who might be in New York who would pick up a copy of an art magazine and see an ad for a commune in Oregon. And they might travel all the way out there and end up living there because despite the fact that they might have a wonderful hometown, they couldn't find the kind of intellectual stimulation that they were seeking there. So they wanted to find some place where they could be among peers. So the ranch idea, from what you're saying, really sounds similar.
Mm-hmm. But what makes a difference is a lack of technology they had back then compared to what we have now. Now we have telecommuting compiled with virtual conferencing and accessing information from other people around the world without having to tie up our phone lines and describe things on a telephone where we can instantly send them the information so we're all reading from the same piece of music here. And for example, like doctors now are doing virtual surgeries where they'll have the doctor other specialists that they had to consult with from around the world, where they'd get on the computer and they would talk on a big screen and they would show the processes and they would send the data back and forth so that they could share. And so you have virtual consultants from around the world where you didn't have that luxury before, and getting the information and actually seeing the procedure live on the web camera. And
Well,
so that's, you have to be able to see what you're describing. And so there's technologies that we have advantage of that gives us the ability to make this process more streamlined that we had back in the 60s too.
yeah, yeah. No, it is interesting, but doesn't that undermine some of the ideas behind the ranch? If you can do a virtual telepresence almost as easily as you can do,
For those
on.
who aren't there.
Okay. So there is something then to actually being able to walk over and look at an experiment rather than the virtual reality of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm also working on an interview right now with Larry Maurer. And again, because you're a well-known activist and advocate in this area, I thought I should ask a little bit about the Unitel project. I know that you've known Larry for quite a while, and you're definitely more than capable of speaking about it. What can you tell us about some of what Unitel's been up to lately?
Well, I can say just without having the materials in front of me, it sounds like that him and Mike Miller is his chief scientist. They have been spending years at putting together presentations and conferences and demonstrations, and it's all again trying to get funding and try to make a break from the military-industrial complex to privatize the ability to, have a place where they can put this together and demonstrate the working of their vehicle, of their spacecraft. And they're using an exotic form of quantum tunneling. Okay, I'll give you an example of what that means. Let's take an example of some of the thousands and thousands of UFO reports, for example. They'll see a ship, and sometimes they'll see it move like a blur, okay? And then sometimes they'll see it blink out, totally disappear, and then, within 3 miles of the sky that you can see, reappear there.
Sure. So they're working on something that can basically, on a macro scale, on a large scale, can blink out at one point and reappear at another, which may be 50 feet away or maybe half the universe away.
And, well, to give you a scenario, an analogy of that, if you will, for example, if you had a Vtol craft, vertical takeoff and landing, for those who do understand what Vtol acronym means, it means that you can have a craft now that you can, say, take straight up off of the parking lot wherever you're at. And it can be your car and adapted to drive on the road and fly in the air, for example. And you would basically, say, go up 100 feet or 500 feet, whatever the requirements are needed. And you would actually communicate with GPS, another technology we didn't have 20, 40 years ago.
Sure.
And then you would connect with the different satellites, and it would give you a pretty much a good, trajectory of where you need to be as far as where you're going. And it would take an accountability of all the traffic, of course, that's in between. But that wouldn't really be an obstruction because you're not going to be in a physical place when you're traveling at that real fast light, travel.
No, that's
you're going
excellent.
to have to worry about any obstructions because imagine time accelerated. Okay, if you were to accelerate time around you, everyone else would appear as if they were, standing still, frozen like mannequins. Everything would be stopped. Okay, that's another part of the process. There is some exotic form of time acceleration going here. And see, with that is now it's not like you'd be just, if you walked across the feet, and weaved in between the people, say, from one side of a department store to the other side, and then as soon as you arrive, it would be like the movie Clock Stoppers, for example, and then they would see you disappear and then reappear somewhere else. But actually, you're accelerated, but you still have to weave in and out of obstructions. This is a little bit different than that. What I mean is,
quantum tunneling it's almost like
you're
folding
accelerated
space
in a way that you're not even existing in a physical form in the same way that we are. Okay, so not only is there time accelerating, but there's an acceleration of all the molecules in the atoms.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
anything physical now becomes pure energy. So it's just like as if I were to pass a beam of light through you, and it would actually go through you, but you wouldn't feel it.
Yeah,
That's
no,
what it would be
it's
like,
it
quantum
makes
tunneling.
sense. It makes sense, and they could
So in
tunnel
a sense,
to any
hmm
point through
hmm
materials.
so you
Well,
wouldn't have to worry about any obstructions except at the arrival point. You want to make sure that that airspace is precision, that you're not going to pop up as an aircraft is heading towards you.
well, Gary, I should also we're running a little short on time, but I should also ask about the Tap 10 research group online. That's a Yahoo group primarily, right? But you also have the website.
Yes. Now the .com and the .org, I have to. I'm in the process of looking for additional servers and looking for another crew to revamp that website up and get that running again. But in the meantime, I do have the Yahoo group, so it
Oh,
should be groups as in plural .yahoo.com/group as in singular /tap 10. It would be TAPTEN.
okay, so there's no dash in there then.
No, no. But if you did a Google search, or any internet search engine, and you just typed in TAP-TEN, that would bring up so many pages. I mean, we have a stronger presence than Shell Oil.
Oh, sure, sure. So it's
That should tell you where the interests are.
yeah, so it's http and then groups.yahoo.com/group/tap10, and that's
That's correct.
TAPTEN.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, Gary, thanks again for your time. I sincerely appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing more from you as things progress, as the ranch project moves forward, as Unitel moves forward with their work, and as everything seems to coalesce over the next following year.
It's been a pleasure. And I want to stress and emphasize that if anybody wants to know about the conference, that they go to Tesla Tech, TESLATECH.info.
teslatech.info. Great. Well, thanks again.
Thanks, Tim. Bye-bye.